And we're now live, I think. Yes. We'll begin in a minute with our lovely cold Polygon episode. This is our severe weather review. This is Polygon Issuance number 28. We'll begin in a couple of minutes. Right now, Henry is busy doing posts on freeze warnings and wondering why there's no frost advisories. And right now, I'm actually sitting on my living room floor. Since this is pretty much going to be just us two tonight, since we're doing our review or whatnot, so we could go off on anything tonight.
Alrighty. Polygon issuance number
Today's 28.
28. This will be our severe weather review, our winter weather preview, and our...
and then any rants we want to talk about.
Yes, and we will rant about all of the things that we feel like. We'll talk trash about the Animals, the football team, a little bit.
No, we're not. We'll talk trash about Clear Lake's football team, too.
We'll talk about how good the program is, along with the weather stuff, too. But I will have to mention here, I'm looking out my window right now. There's a beautiful sky out right now, but very cold.
So it's clearing there.
It is clearing. I see some breaks in the clouds, but it's overall overcast. But the majority of the clouds are to the west here, and the sunset is very beautiful, at least from the parts I can see. So maybe we can go take a trip.
I didn't have a sunset. It's too cloudy here. But I will mention to viewers that Henry has been missing in action for several weeks now.
Yes, I am returning after a brief hiatus to go. Last week I was catching up on business work, and then the weeks before I was at football games. And then before that I had severe weather. So I am finally back in my general expertise area of severe weather preview and good old winter weather. So once I get this post put up here.
As soon as my computer, whoops, I better shut off stuff because I don't want the computer to blow up.
Let's see, type freeze. Winter.
Then I'll turn my camera on. In fact, I'll do that now. I'm gonna sit on this. I'm gonna go over to the sofa and sit because finally, with me having a new computer battery, I can finally unplug the computer and it's not gonna die after like 45 minutes.
Alrighty, now that is done, we can go ahead and get started of our to put it lightly. Just a few. We can actually kind of go chronologically here, and go in order. We'll kind of just go off of the. First, we'll look at the tornado warnings that got issued, the different events with that. And then we'll kind of talk about the verification, how forecasters did overall, and then we'll kind of just go off of that. So I'm going to go find what tornado warning, doing a quick search here.
Now I would mention that we're probably going to be a little more localized with this in the state of Iowa where we are, but we'll talk some major events too that have happened nationally. On some scale.
Joey, a national show. Just what I was. Anyway, um, the first tornado events we saw this year um, was in April 13th, and we had two tornado warnings. I believe these were the surprise tornado warnings.
That was the squall line that produced. Wasn't that the squall line that produced that 46-mile long one?
Yes, this specific warning was for southwestern Cedar, southeastern Johnson, and northwestern Muscatine until 6:30, and this was a confirmed warning of a tornado located near Lone Tree um, at this time. And if we go and look at the event log for the tornado data for 2014, we can kind of go into that a little bit. This year
You can screen
there
share it
were
if you want.
31 EF0 tornadoes, 21 EF1s, and 3 EF2s, no EF3, EF4, and EF5s, and everything totaled up to about 55 tornadoes. It was not the 46-mile wide or long tornado damage path, rather, to be specific, but this was the, I'm going to find it here. April 13th, it was an EF0, 0.9 miles west of Lone Tree.
Yep.
Team from the National Weather Service Quad Cities Forecast Office surveyed the area around Lone Tree. No damage was found. The tornado path was estimated from witnesses and radar. They said that a funnel went up and down numerous times, and photo and video documentation confirmed that.
Yep.
So just one of those, the usuals where you see these spin up tornadoes, and I do believe that the conditions we were seeing many. I believe that was the day where we were just seeing kind of showers and thunderstorms around the state, and there was just the right conditions to see that kind of event. So, Jeff, if you have anything to say, please.
I'm going to see if I'm going to find some of these because I did a lot of most of the radar images for this, so I'm going to start searching for them, so bear with me. I have so many of them, so I'm going to have to look at some of these.
So there were two events rather in April. That was the first. That was on April 13th, where we just saw the lone tornado near Lone Tree. But the next event was on April 27th, which is kind of a funny date if you think about it. But we saw 3 tornado warnings that day for Lynn, Cedar, Jones, Carroll, and Green, or rather, Cedar, Jones, and Lynn, as well as Iowa and Keokuk, saw tornado warnings that day. Not seeing any. We did see some confirmed that day. That was the one with the pretty interesting tornado. That was the 46-mile wide damage path with the tornado that started 2.2 miles east-northeast of Highland Center. It ended up being an EF1. It formed in far northern Wapello County and quickly tracked northeastward at 60 miles per hour. Relatively weak damage, hence the reason for the EF1 rating. It was the damage path again was very long, the longest in the state this year by a long shot. Damage was found mainly in primarily confined to trees, farm outbuildings, and power lines. Tracked through Keokuk, one of the bigger population centers there, and Johnson counties before dissipating west of Iowa City.
I have the radar image from that day, by the way. It formed right about here. And there was the end of the tornado warning. That was the only tornado warning they issued on it, was this one. The tornado at the point was about right here. Pretty much on a squall line.
Unfortunate. Did we see any other fatalities in Iowa aside from those two?
Just those two.
Which we were pretty sad and then a little bit disappointed by, because I guess the fatalities were due to flying debris, one near Martinsburg and another near Kinross. And in reality, we can't blame the Weather Service too much on that, as they did do the best they can based off of the radar. But in reality, I remember that event well enough that I can say that there was not a lot of velocity signatures that would have normally uh, showed a tornado warning. Like we said, this was a weak EF1, but did unfortunately.
Well, here was the interesting thing about that, because this is the same day. This was about 45 minutes before. This is the same squall line, as you can see here. And I'll click my stuff so I can keep it on here. Oh, wait a minute. Let me go back. Okay, see? This right here. You can see these little notches. We saw a lot of that this year, where we had squall lines with little notches. And it was one of these notches that I think started the tornado off, because here is about the time when I think the tornado first touched down. You can see it formed right about here. There's a little notch. But there's also this storm here. We had a lot of this. There was a notch here, here. You can see a lot of these. And I mean, you see a lot of these with squall lines. We had a lot of them this year. We had something similar to this later on June 30th that hit here, where I'm at. There was no tornado, although there were pictures of a funnel cloud, but the Weather Service never confirmed there was a tornado here. Should there have been, maybe they should have come here and done some damage surveys, because I never knew if they did. But most of the trees that did fall from that storm, and we'll get to that a little later, fell in pretty much one direction. But, I mean, you can't issue tornado warnings for every little notch.
Yeah, that was
here and here. Otherwise, we'd have so many tornado warnings, they'd be like, oh, cry wolf, we don't care. I mean, can you see the tornado in this? This was the only tornado warning. The tornado was on the ground. It was actually in this, right here, in this area. I mean, and this, and I'll let you after this. You can't really see tornadoes on this. This is one of these spin up things, but this happened to have a tornado that was on the ground for 46 miles. How's the Weather Service going to know that a squall line, which typically could produce a spin up tornado that lasts 1 mile, 1 or 2 minutes, and then it's gone? But in this case, here's a 46-mile long tornado on a squall line, and it kills 2 people.
The second tornado that we saw that day was near Lisbon, 2.8 miles north of there. It was an EF0. Some of the remarks from the Weather Service on that specific report. Several spotters reported a tornado between Mount Vernon and Springville. Traffic lights were knocked out by the tornado. Radar signatures showed this tornado shares the same parent storm circulation that can be traced back to the Keokuk County tornado. So as you can see, that specific notch really was. There were a lot of notches within that entire line, but it's really hard with current technology to figure out and validate which notches are actually, because we saw velocity signatures that were decent like that all day, but to issue a tornado warning on every single one of them, like Jeff said, would be crying wolf, and you just can't do that. I mean, it's really hard to. We do the best we can. I mean, as soon as the Weather Service gets their reports, then they'll issue the warning, but you can't just issue a warning for every single notch that you see, and that specific storm was just one of those ones that's hard to explain it, because it was one storm that produced 2 tornadoes, the 44-mile one and then the small one north of Lisbon. Jeff, do you have a radar image to share, or
I
a nice little taskbar there, or
Well, right now I'm going to bring up. Remember, that was the day that I saw that wall cloud. So I'm going to go and find it. You may have it too because I did send it to you, but I think I do have it.
do you have was that the one that I enhanced, or?
Yes, that's the one you enhanced so then I could get a better view of it because it was really hazy. It was looking through rain. It's the same day. In fact, that was from that same storm too. And I'd have to go and find it because it was not on my list.
Okay. On there.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
The rate I'm going, I'll probably never find it.
But was that the one that wasn't there a tornado warning for? Wasn't there a tornado warning? That was with the same one that had a tornado
That
warning.
was the tornado. That was from the same. That was from. Wait a minute. Let me screen share this back. That was from this storm. The one that was near Mount Vernon, Lisbon. You can see the tornado warning. The storm went up. Whoops. Let me get back to this. The storm kind of the notch area went kind of like this west of Anamosa where I'm at. Anamosa is just off the screen, by the way. But this little area where there was that spin and that was brief tornado kept moving north, and I did see the wall cloud. Now, whether I can find that, it's in here somewhere. I'd have to look for it. But
so in reality, it was one storm that did it that day. One cell to be specific, but one storm that dropped 2 tornadoes, one 44-mile one, and the one shorter one that went to the southwest of Jeff. Correct me if I'm wrong. With a wall cloud. So, I mean, we could say that there was still a probability of a tornado. I mean, he saw a wall cloud to the southwest of him. So the possibility was still there, and it's interesting how one specific storm did that. And I mean, I'm not saying that the other ones didn't have a funnel or wall cloud with it, but it was really one storm that day that produced those 2 tornadoes. So, Jeff, are you still looking, or?
I found the original picture that wasn't enhanced, but I found the original of it. So let me screen share it. This was the original picture. This was the one before we enhanced it. You can see right here is where it was. You can see the right edge hanging down, and it's not Scud, because I knew what Scud was, because I have pictures of Scud from later on. It was kind of hangs down like this, and then it kind of comes back up.
And if I can share here, this is from the National Weather Service in Des Moines of the radar loop. And if we can, just to kind of clarify, the first panel is showing base reflectivity, which is your normal radar, and then the second panel is showing our storm relative velocity, which is where we can kind of see the better the rotation with the storms. And you can kind of see how you get these notches developing, and it was just kind of off and on. But you really saw one around this area, which is, I believe, the one they put the tornado warning on. Was that with that one notch? You can see it's just kind of going on. It wasn't as good, then it got good again, and then it went into the National Weather Service in the Quad Cities territory. And they did not believe that, due to the hesitant nature. You can see there on the rotation it was off and on. And when you have stuff like that, I mean, issuing a tornado warning becomes kind of, become a little hesitant on it, because you could have a tornado and then it lifts back up, and the likelihood is that is a funnel cloud or a wall cloud most of the time, but whether there were reports with it or something of that nature would be interesting to see.
And another thing is, if you look at that rotation, it was almost all in heavy rain because the rain completely wrapped around it. So then nobody could see it. That's why we have no pictures of that tornado, because it was wrapped, and you had to have been like right beside it to see it. And the storm was moving so quickly. If you had been right beside it, you would have been hit by it.
And the one that I'm showing now is the tornado that went near Martell, and this one doesn't have as good as a signature, but you can still kind of see where there was a little bit of rotation, hence the need for the tornado. That if we...
The red dot, by the way, that was on that radar image was where the tornado was.
Gotcha. But, yeah, so just to recap, the 27th event, 2 tornadoes, one lasted 3:20 to 4:06 p.m., affected Wapello, Keokuk, Iowa, and Johnson counties. The start location was 2.2 miles east-northeast of Highland Center. It was an EF1 and lasted 45.6 miles, and there were unfortunately, two deaths associated with that tornado. And then the second one started at, or lasted pretty much only for a minute or so at 4:40 p.m. Affected Lynn County, 2.8 miles north of Lisbon, as we showed, was an EF0 and only had a path length of about half a mile. So going off the 27th, we kind of want to keep chugging along here. We did have a couple tornado warnings on, just to kind of describe more in detail, we had 2 events in the month of May that were of mentioning, but the 8th that I'm talking about, there were 2 tornado warnings, one for Northeast Carroll and Northwest Green, and then another for Northern Guthrie. But looking at this list, there was no confirmed tornado on with those 2 tornado warnings, thankfully. But the big event that honestly, just kind of looking through this list, we could say was more than likely the event of the year. I mean, June was just kind of scattered around. I mean, June 16th, you can make a case for that. Probably even July 6th, too. And just to mention, we haven't had a tornado that has been confirmed since August 31st, and that was an EF1, but we'll get to that in a bit. But describing the May 11th event, the first tornado warning, or actually we won't look at the tornado warnings. Maybe Jeff can find the radar images for that day if he covered it. But the first tornado that we saw that day was at 4:24 p.m. in Lee County. And that was the one that, trying to remember here, had a little bit of another spin-up type event, if I remember.
Yeah, that was a spin-up.
It was 2.4 miles northwest of Charleston, lasted a tenth of a mile, was an EF0. And if we bring up the radar image, again, the red dot is the location of the tornado, as Jeff said. But thanks again for the National Weather Service in Des Moines for a great write-up on all of these. But you can see these were pretty much better to detect on radar. I mean, it was still in the fringe of the National Weather Service in Quad Cities and Des Moines radars, as well as the one in St. Louis there. But you can still see that hook type structure, and you did see the velocity, that was probably one of the prime signatures that day. And that was actually the first one. It did produce a small tornado, very weak, EF0, but did produce some minor damage there in Lee County, and just a few details regarding that. If I click on the right event.
Because here was the radar that I had. Let me go back to Henry. That's the picture of the tornado. Pretty much what I would say, that's pretty much what a needle point kind of cone tornado that comes down, lifts. this is what I would consider, that's the typical tornado we typically see in Iowa most of the time, is those smaller tornadoes. You don't get big, huge wedges. We may get maybe a couple of those a year, and this year we've had a few, but they've not been relatively strong. So if anybody thinks that, oh, I mean, tornadoes can be that small or they can be huge. They all should be taken seriously. Just don't expect that every tornado is going to look like a huge wedge like Parkersburg in 2008, or any tornadoes you've seen like Moore last year or Moore 99. So,
moving on to the next event. This is that was at 4:24 p.m. just to keep in mind, and that was the only afternoon event. Just kind of noting some of the network's thoughts on that. We did have a risk that day, and we were all in the chat room, and to be honest, we were kind of beginning to call bust because the afternoon kind of went by. We only saw that one for Lee, and thankfully, and we were just about to call it, but eventually we did begin to see more action up in northwest through central Iowa. The next tornado on the 11th started at 8:35 p.m. and ended at 8:46. This was in Sioux County. It started 6 miles west-northwest of Hospers. It was an EF1 and had a path length of 4.1 miles. No injuries or deaths with that. Jeff, if you kind of want to show the radar, I'll keep you up.
Yeah, here it was, and you can see here we pretty much had quite a few TVSs here, and this was pretty much, from what I can remember, it was kind of a semi-squall line type setup, but this was another, and I've seen a video of this tornado. It was similar to the one we just showed, a little bit bigger, but it was at night, so, or it was dark, or getting close to dark. So this was a tornado that it went through fields, from what I can remember from it, but nothing too serious. Although a tornado is serious if it hits your house or a farm or whatnot. This was kind of what I would say is the typical summer tornado in the state.
Going on to the next tornado now. That did dissipate at 8:46, and I should recommend this to Des Moines. I think it would be cool to see the warning.
Here is the velocity of that tornado from Sioux County. You can see the rotation, because I didn't realize I had that right here.
Heading
I had some, but it wasn't very good.
Heading on away from that, again, that was the EF1. Second, well, that had the third longest length on the 11th. Only an EF1, so still weak, thankfully. So keep in mind that's 6 miles west-northwest of Hospers. The next one started 4 minutes later and only lasted 2 minutes there in Sioux County again. This was later on in the path, 2.4 miles northwest of Hospers, just over 3/4 of a mile wide. It was an EF0. Looking at the velocity from that, there was a pretty clear signature. We did think that it may affect Sheldon. I can't remember if that was the one that we were kind of getting worried all around.
That's the next one.
I do remember from that day, just to kind of give you my point of view, we were just kind of worried about Sheldon overall, as they just kept getting rotational for him a couple times, and there wasn't a warning on him a couple times, and we were obviously looking out for that area. Of course, Jeff, you can go ahead if you have a radar up.
Well, this is the one I think you're talking about. It's this. This was the warning after, and you have this. Whoops. Right here. That was later, and because this purple box was the tornado, was the second Hospers tornado. This box up here was a different one, and you can see the rotation. It looks a bit suspicious that it's only red here and only dark green here, so it looks. But there was a TBS on it, so. And I don't know if that was ever confirmed. Was that the next one down?
I believe it was.
Okay.
So, keeping the chug along with this, as we do have 55 to get through, 55 tornadoes to get through here. The next one, that was the strongest one is after this, but at 8, pretty much 7 minutes later at 8:59, lasted another one for 2 minutes, and EF0 in O'Brien County. This was 2.8 miles east of Shelton.
That's the one. That's this one.
Just a little under a half-mile long damage path. Looking at comments there, if we can get this, brief tornado caused no reported damage. So yeah, that's one of the things that was noticeable this year. Not a lot of damage with these, except for the 3 EF2s. So we're looking on that end. About an average tornado year, but we'll look at that information a little later on. Jeff, if you can go ahead.
Because that's the one I was showing right here. This, and it only looked good on radar for like 1 or 2 scans, and then it slowly disappeared. So,
moving on to the next one. This was the pretty much the overall strongest one of the season, in my opinion. Overall, this was 10, or actually just a little under 11 miles long with a path. Started at 9:43 and ended at 9:58. So there was a period from 9:01 p.m. to 9:43 p.m. So about 42 minutes in between there without a tornado. Lasted 15 minutes or so in Guthrie County. Started 4 miles south of Guthrie Center. Was in the end an EF2. If I try to load that tornado, QLCS tornado track from south of Guthrie Center northeastward across Lake Panorama, where EF2 damage was found. The tornado dissipated after passing over the lake, and another tornado took over. So another one of those storms. Just showing the damage here again. This is all courtesy of the National Weather Service in Des Moines. If I can load up my wonderful screen sharing abilities. And it is good to note that we did have our own chaser, James Sturstrom, on that system. He was just kind of skirting on the outsides of that. But this was the damage from that. As you can see, pretty bad damage to this house near Guthrie Center. You can see the roof looks like it collapsed. A lot of damage on the outside. You have some siding. Just looks like an entire wall got blown out there. So a lot of damage in that area, and we should be pretty thankful, as this was about the worst damage that Iowa saw for this average tornado year. But Jeff, you can go ahead if you have your radar.
Yeah, this was after the storm. I think it was at the second tornado. You can easily see the rotation right here. The brighter red in this green, I think, is because it's a little bit overdone, but you can still see pretty much in this area right here. This is just northeast of Lake Panorama as it headed in this direction, more or less. Right here, heading in this direction, more or less.
And that was, there were 3 EF2s. The other one was from June 3rd, and then the third one was from June 30th. But this was, in terms of path lengths and overall damage, probably produced the most damage, thankfully. Only lasted around 15 minutes in Guthrie County, mainly affecting Guthrie Center. So the May 11th event overall, we still have a few more to go, 4 more or 3 more to go. But this was overall the worst event that we saw in Iowa, although the June 16th event probably comes in very close there. But moving on to the next tornado on the May 11th event, 9:56 to 10:03 p.m. So 7-minute long tornado in Guthrie County, 3.8 miles northwest of Panora. This was an EF1 tornado with about a 5-mile path length. So one of the second or third strongest tornadoes. Looking at the radar data, you could see some kind of hook structure, but the overall velocity data did not have as much tightness as some of the other ones. We did see that really hook type structure. We did see that pretty easily, and we were waiting for that velocity data to show the strong rotation, strong and intense rotation. But there was a lot of just strong velocity readings all around there, but it was not tight enough. But I do think that no doubt that if that velocity would have been tighter, we could have seen much more damage than we already saw, which we should be pretty thankful for, that it was just an EF2 and not an EF.
Well, if you note, you looked at, because this is from the image I just showed earlier, it's the same one. You can see right here, and then it butts out. It's another one of these storms that's in a little notch area again, in what was a squall line, because I remember it was a squall line again. A lot of these tornadoes we had this year were in squall lines, or kind of multi-cell clusters that were kind of acting like they were in a line, but they weren't. They were like trying to be in a line, and then they'd kind of start to break up and start to form their own spins again. And this is one where it butted out like this, and the tornado was right in the middle. We had a lot of these this year.
And then finally, on the May 11th event, the next one lasted, did I just go over the one for, yeah, Panora? We have 2 more actually. 6-minute long tornado, second to last tornado on the 11th. Affected Dallas County. It started 3.6 miles northwest of Dallas Center. Was an EF0, about impressive path length of about 6 miles. Looking at the velocity data, it looks like that was just part of a squall line that was about to head into the Des Moines area, another one of those spin-up type events. Jeff can probably explain a little bit more.
I don't have the radar for that one.
But that was the one, eventually all of those, aside from those isolated cells, we had a long line going across western Iowa there, and it was pushing into central Iowa, and we just had same thing as that April 27th event, where we had notches all around that line, and we did actually see some damage with those notches. This one was the one that affected 3.6 miles northwest of Dallas Center and went on for 6 miles. Looking at the path length, if we can load that up, there we go. Not that one. Maybe if I can load the right one up here. There we go. A tornado rapidly formed north of Dallas Center and tracked to the northeast for about 6 miles over open farmland. It damaged only outbuildings, but produced some impressive field scouring. If we show that image up here, this was from John Laughlin over at KCCI. Credit out to him and Iowa Helicopter, KCCI, and service in the morning, of course. But you could see the pretty impressive field scorching going on there from that tornado that lasted 6 miles or so with a maximum length of about 100 yards. Very impressive there. And then finally, the last tornado that we saw was In Boone County, 3 miles southeast of Luther, about 1 3/4 mile long tornado, EF0 damage. It lasted 2 minutes. 3 miles southeast of Luther. And looking at the velocity on that one again, this was as the line was passing to pretty much through central Iowa from a line from, I believe it was like Webster City down through Des Moines and down through south central Iowa. And that this was a squall line that was having notches, like I said, and another one of those spin-ups that thankfully didn't produce a whole lot of damage. But moving on to the next event, this is actually for June now, which was a very active month. Counting through here, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We had 8 tornado days during the month of June. It was the most active month as usual. We'll start out with the lone tornado that for Winnebago County, it was around the lunch hour. I believe it was a Saturday or one of the weekend days. For about a 1 mile tornado for 2 minutes from 12:42 p.m. to 12:44 p.m. in Winnebago County. 1.2 miles southeast of Buffalo Center was an EF0. Looking at the radar data with that specific event, it was another one of those days where we had showers and thunderstorms heading out throughout the state, and we had the special weather statement saying conditions are favorable for funnel clouds, and it was one of those isolated events where we had a spin-up tornado because the conditions weren't were favorable, but it wasn't one of those really touchy days where you would normally see tornadoes. But again, one of those spin-ups from thunderstorms that we often saw for the month of June. And then another lone tornado happened on the 3rd. This was in Pottawatomie County, 5.1 miles southeast of Bentley. It was an EF2, which, remember, we only had 3 of those this year. It had a path length of 2.81 miles, and I'm actually going to go look at that event there. Short-lived tornado impacted a number of farmsteads as it tracked quickly to the southeast. The tornado downed trees, power lines, and completely destroyed outbuildings along its path. The tornado was embedded with a larger area of damage and winds associated with an intense supercell, which I remember that was the event where we were looking at very large hail. We had a multitude of severe thunderstorm warnings that day, and the radar values you can see, Jeff, if you are showing that was the day. You can't really see it as good on Jeff's image because of the color table, but when we look at level 2 data from Des Moines, this was during the time you can see the very high reflectivity values with a huge hail core. We were talking upwards, I believe, what was the biggest hailstone that we saw that day, Jeff?
I know on the data it was up to, we had 4-inch hail, but I don't think we ever got it that high. I think we saw maybe up to teacup size or 3 inches. I know we saw at least baseballs.
Yeah, we saw a lot of warnings with baseball size hail. I remember seeing a couple teacup size reports, but this was one of I haven't seen a lot of the values being this high on reflectivity for a long time. As you can see, it's nearly maxing out the table in those whites between 80 to 100 dBz, which we normally start seeing hail about 65 to 70 to 75 dBz, sometimes even 60 to 65. But that was the impressive hail event. Thankfully, only produced 1 tornado that day, and EF2, a stronger one, but thankfully only lasted 3 minutes in Pottawatomie County. Moving on to probably the second or first biggest event for the 2014 severe weather season on June 16th, 2014. We saw the first tornado form for about a minute in Lyon County up there in northwest Iowa. Started 2 miles northwest of Alvord. Was an EF0 and only had a path length of about 0.2 of a mile. Looking at the radar data there, that was another one of those where we had the hook-like structure, had the strong velocities, but right there in the middle where we did see some circulation, which was the reason for the tornado warning and the weak tornado. But in all honesty, if we saw those higher velocity values tighter together, we could have seen more damage because we saw the normal hook shape. The conditions were just not right to see the stronger rotation tightening up. If we would have seen that, we could have possibly, Jeff, if he has the radar data up, I'll show the velocity here just to show what I'm talking about.
This was when the storm had moved out of Lyon County into Osceola County.
You can see there what I'm talking about, where we have the hook-like structure, and you can see on the velocity on the right that we did have some pretty strong values of velocity, where if we would have seen it tighter right down in the middle there, it could have potentially been a little worse than that, but thankfully it wasn't. And the interesting thing to note here that the location of the tornado was not really in the best place of where the velocity was. You can see it's to the north of Albert, when in reality the tornado passed to the southwest of Albert. I'm not sure if that's exactly correct, but as it does look like the best rotation is to the southwest, but I guess you never know with these storms. Weak DBZ value, interesting to note, we normally see a little bit more of a stronger hook there, but we had the hook, we had the rotation, we just didn't see it as tight, but it did still produce a tornado, an EF0 that day. Going to the third tornado of that day, it lasted 8 minutes in Humboldt County on the 16th of June. 4.6 miles southwest of Hardy, it was an EF0 with a path length of 4.81 miles. The radar data that I'm looking at here looked like it was with a pretty intense thunderstorm, kind of hard to see as there was a lot of range folding with that, but there was still some rotation. You can see there the nice path length that they put up. That's really nice of them to kind of put that up. You can see the strong rotation right there to the southwest of Hardy. Very kind of harder to see because of the range folding and the degraded radar quality, but there was some rotation there in the tornado. If they have the red, they do not have the red dot on there, but it did pass to the southwest of Hardy with that little area of rotation. Continuing to chug along here, this was the one that affected me and that I saw out my window, the first one I've seen in a couple of years, actually. I think the last one that Nation City saw was north of the airport in 05 or so, but it lasted for 5 minutes from 6:48 p.m. to 6:53, passed 6 miles northeast of Clear Lake. It was an EF1, wasn't an EF0, wasn't an EF2, but an EF1. It lasted 3 miles to the north of Clear Lake in Mason City in the farmland area. In Mason City, it was, I do believe it was north of Kraft and some of that industrial area there in Mason City, north of the part there of the it was north of Mason City. It didn't go as far as Kraft, but it did affect the farm areas there in Clear Lake and Mason City. And now that I mentioned this, Jeff, I'm kind of thinking, what was the event that Dan got that tornado with?
That would be Traer number 2. That's July.
You should see if I'm actually going to see if we can get Dan on here to talk about that event, as we do think it would probably be helpful. So Jeff, if you can kind of keep going with this while I try to contact him.
Okay. Well, we had, now let me screen, I'd have to look at the things. We had several tornadoes going into the, We had several tornado warnings on the 6th, later in the 16th. I remember some of these. Let's see. I'm going to start zipping through these, so bear with me because I don't have the tornado list in front of me. I do remember this tornado warning. This was on the 16th. This was at about 9:30. This was in Delaware County. As you can see by the purple, it was a confirmed tornado on the ground in this area. So
and this is just to kind of make sure we're synced up here, Jeff. This is number 19 that we're on now.
okay. So anyway, this tornado went. We had several warnings on this because you can see, if you notice, here's a nice big thing. It's another squall line, and if you notice, another kind of right here, northwest of Manchester. This is another case of squall line, little indention, another spin up. I don't think it lasted too long. The one in Delaware County?
No, it didn't.
But I mean, because here it is right here. This was the same morning later. This was when they issued a severe thunderstorm warning for both Delaware and Dubuque County. You can see how it's kind of bowing out and looking more like a damaging wind threat. And I think I've gone too far. Wait a minute, okay, I gotta... Okay, then I remember there was this tornado warning. It's the same day, I think. I know there was no tornado on this. And I know there was no tornado on this one either. Because, yeah, it's the same storm, but I remember this. You can see, they're pretty much... At this point, you can see like little indentions where you can see something like try to spin here and whatnot. So, and you can kind of see the radar is trying to say there's TBSs everywhere and whatnot. Okay, now we're on to the next day because that's the next one. So I gotta shut that off and find out where I'm at now. Let's see, where am I? Blah, 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 blah. Okay, that would take me to... Just a minute, I gotta figure out where I'm at. Oh, we're up to the next day, June 17th, where we had to do a squall line that lasted through the morning hours. That was not fun. And then there was this tornado warning there was a tornado warning in Scott County at 3:30 in the morning, which I never understood. I don't think there was a tornado on that one either. On June 17th at something about 3. Then June 17th during the day, at night there was some more activity. Trying to see if any of these were actual tornadoes. Was there a tornado on... Wait a minute, let me look. What number is this? Was there a tornado on June 17th?
Yes.
Okay.
27.
Where was it?
Lyon County, 5.5 miles south of Georgia, was an EF0 and was 0.3 of a mile wide.
Okay, I have the velocity on that one. Right here. That's pretty evident. You can tell what this is.
That was wasn't that the one that seemed like it was spinning around there?
This, I think, if I remember, was spinning for quite some time, but it was kind of broad, and this is when it started to tighten up.
Now that I think about it, we do need to talk about that Nebraska stuff. But Jeff, now that I've texted Jeff, I can kind of take over. You said we're on number 27 or 27, correct?
The one on June 17th.
Yeah, that tornado lasted for a minute there in Lyon County, 5.5 miles south of George, 0.3 of a mile wide. Moving on to June 18th, one lone tornado. This was early in the morning for a minute at 11:15 a.m., 2.9 miles west-northwest of Royal, was 0.2 of a mile wide. Radar data showing pretty strong rotation, but only an EF0. On June 19th, we had 2 tornadoes, one in Clay County, another in Delaware. The Clay County tornado lasted a minute. Southeast of Spencer was just between 1/10 and 2/10 of a mile wide southeast of Spencer and EF0. And then the other one was in Delaware County from a rather long time, 24 minutes or so. Started 2.1 miles southwest of Delaware, lasted 15.69 miles radar, and that was with a line that was passing through. Another one of those where seems like it's been a trend this year where we see the squall line pass up and we see those notches and we have the tornadoes along that. Moving on to the 29th, which we had 5 tornadoes that day. 7:28 to 7:33 in Hamilton County, 3.1 miles east-northeast of Stanhope. We had an EF0 for 2.05 miles. And then on June 29th also, we had a tornado from 4 Minute in Shelby County, 1.8 miles west-northwest of Panama. EF0, half a mile long damage path with that.
Here was the first one. This one. I'm trying to go through all my radar datas. This is the Shelby County one.
So now we have, then the next tornado on the 29th lasted for 4 minutes in Grundy County from 8:18 to 8:22. Started 0.9 miles west of Morrison. It was an EF1 and lasted 1.9 miles or so. Again, this was, they've really zoomed in. It pretty much just went through the Morrison area. A rather weak velocity signature with that one, but one of those spin-ups that we see pass through the area.
It's right in this area. There were multiple circulations. There was this one. This is the easternmost one. And then you can see the easternmost tornado warning here. This was the storm that produced the Stanhope tornado, that EF0. The same one. It kept producing little tornadoes for quite a while.
Then the next one on the 29th was in Hardin County for 3 minutes, 1.5 miles south-southwest of Gifford. Was an EF1 and it lasted 1.33 miles. Another one that was a continuation. Never mind about that, but pretty much just went through the Gifford area. Again, one of those situations where we have some strong velocities, but it's not as connected. Although, if you look south of Gifford, there it did become pretty connected there at a point north of Gifford, or south of the track. There you can see on the first one, but not as. Again, another one of those where the velocities don't match up as much as they could have and potentially create additional damage. Next one there on the 29th, the last one on the 29th lasted for a minute at 10:36 p.m. for Jones County, 2.5 miles northeast of Wyoming. Was 1/10 of a mile wide and was just one of those. Again, another strong rotation thing, but they didn't really tighten up. Jeff can probably talk about that one a little bit.
The one in Jones County, there was no warning on it, if I remember right. If there was, I don't remember it because I don't have the radar for it.
Okay, so And then
And that
finally,
wasn't June 29th also the day of the first Trare, or was that June 30th? Yeah, it was June 30th that was Trare 1.
yeah.
Because
So then,
sorry to interrupt, because I know, because on the radar I'm showing here, right here, this was the day before Trare 1. And you can actually see this Trare. If you wanted to see a tornado this year, go to Trare. They had two a week apart. In fact, 6 days apart. One was on a Monday, or no, one was on a Monday, and one was on a Sunday. So you could have spent a week in Trare, come on Sunday, left on the following Monday, and you would have seen two tornadoes.
so moving on to the 30th, we saw 7 tornadoes that day, or 8 rather. The first one this was an early afternoon event. The first one was from 12:42 to 12:50 p.m. in Adair County. Started 4 miles southeast of Casey. It was an EF1, and it went on for 7.68 miles. And these were another one of those high reflectivity with the hail cores. This one
You
went.
might want to screen share this if you're looking at it.
This was south of Casey, Menlo, and Stewart. And another one of those situations where there were strong velocities. There was the hook, but it was not tight enough to really produce many damage. And you can really see there was a classic hook with that one when it was south of Menlo. And pretty much only EF1 damage, had a lot of hail with it too, but could have been potentially worse if the rotation was tighter that day. The next tornado lasted for 23 minutes in Story, Marshall, and Hardin counties, was 12.86 miles long for the path. Started 1.7 miles east of Zering. It was an EF1 south of New Providence, Gifford, and Union, and north of St. Anthony. But it was a long one. Pretty much went from Zering, went across the county border, went north of St. Anthony up into rural areas of those counties, and then eventually crossed up near Union, across the county border there, and went south of Union. And I believe that I can't remember what state highway that is, or if it's a U.S. highway or not, but the one that goes through Union, maybe Jeff can.
Oh, yeah, that, I think right offhand, I can't think of it right now.
You gotta be in severe weather mode for that. But anyway, the next tornado was for a minute in Madison County, 5.7 miles northeast of Winterset. It was an EF1 with path length of 1.34 miles. Radar data for that shows another one of those hooks. We've seen a lot of hooks in Iowa this year, and strong rotation. I think that's pretty much been the motto of the tornadoes in Iowa this year, where we have that those strong velocity signatures. We have the hook. It just isn't tight enough to really produce a big swath of damage. That we've seen that trend on a lot of these images. The next one on the 30th. Let's see, I just went the Winterset one. The next one went on for 8 minutes from 11:15 to 11:23. Another one in Madison County, 3.9 miles northwest of Patterson. It was an EF1. Was 6.5 miles long for a path. And looking at the radar data, another one of those hook-shaped ones. Another one where we had the strong rotation signatures but didn't tighten up enough. Jeff can probably chime in on this a little bit more, but really, Jeff can probably agree if he's seen the radar images for these.
All I remember about the June 30th event is it was it was pretty much a derecho, as I would call it, with embedded tornadoes, spin-up tornadoes in it. because I got hit by that derecho where I'm at in Anamosa, and I lost power. Well, surprisingly enough, where I'm at now, my power was only out maybe 5 minutes. But there were trees down. That was just a day. If you weren't hit by a tornado, you were probably hit by strong straight line winds that probably are going to knock things down and cause lots of problems. That was pretty much what I would consider a red letter day for severe weather overall at that point.
So the next one here went on for 11 minutes in Marshall and Hardin counties, 2.6 miles west of Bangor.
Bangor or Bangor.
EF0 tornado that lasted 6.57 miles. It pretty much went through Union, was the main city affected there, but again, weak damage with the EF0. We're going to kind of finish up here on June 30th so we can get through July 2. Next tornado was 2 minutes long from 11:27 to 11:29 in Warren County. 1 mile north of Martinsdale was an EF1, 2 miles for the path length. 2:02 to 2:10 p.m. in Tama County, 3.3 miles northwest of Schreier. That was an EF2 with 4 mile path length. We'll kind of talk about that one in depth if Jeff has.
That's the one that went on the south side of town. That was Traer 1. We're naming them Traer 1. Traer 1 went through the south side of town. Traer 2, which is in July, went north of town.
And looking at the damage pic, this was courtesy of a public source. You can see the roof for the most part blown off, some parts remain, and then potentially some wall damage on the other side of that. Can't really see too much from the small picture. But yeah, so this was one of the 3 strongest tornadoes in Iowa this year. Remarks from the Weather Service: formed northwest of Traer, where heavily damaged outbuildings on a farmstead, turned southeastward and clipped the southwest and south central parts of Traer. EF2 damage was sustained to one home on the edge of town with the roof completely removed and destroyed. The tornado quickly weakened as it moved further into town and dissipated over the southeast side of town. So that was the EF2-1 in Traer. The longest maximum width of that was 150 yards. 2:02 to 2:10 p.m. Central Time, 4 mile path length. Moving on from that, going to keep chugging through these. 2:27 to 2:28 in Benton County, 2.2 miles west of Urbana. An EF1 lasted for 0.43 miles. Again, in Benton County, and that was, looking at the radar, not a lot of high reflectivity. It just really looked like some showers, but the tornado, not a lot of velocity. I doubt there's a warning on that, at least based off this, but apparently a weak EF1 tornado went through that area.
I think there may have been a tornado tag on almost every severe thunderstorm warning that entire day, if there wasn't a tornado warning.
Tornado tag, for those that don't know what we're talking about, at the bottom of the severe thunderstorm warnings, there is a tag that they can add on if there is a chance that there could be a tornado embedded with a cell, aka similar to saying there's potential that there's a spin-up tornado or funnel clouds or wall clouds, but we don't want to issue a warning on it because we don't have enough confidence in it.
And we should mention too, sorry to interrupt, that they're doing this in the central region and some offices in the southern region as part of the new thing that I cannot remember.
Impact-based warnings.
Impact-based warnings, thank you.
So moving on to July now, we only had one event in July.
Boy, was it an event.
Or actually, yeah, just one. And it was on July 6th, 2 days after the 4th of July. we'll start out pretty much all EF0s and EF1s that day, so not a whole lot of damage. But first one, 1 minute long, 603 to 604 in Hamilton County, 2.5 miles northwest of Jewell, was an EF0 with a path length of 0.56 miles. Next one was again 4 minutes from 7 to 701 in Butler County, 2.6 miles southeast of Kesley. 4/10 of a mile long on that one, another EF0. 758 to 807, so this was one of the longer ones in EF1. Lasted for 9 minutes in Grundy County. Started 2.1 miles northwest of Renbeck and lasted for 3.24 miles. Looking at the radar data on that, we did see some rotation there over Renbeck, but it was really associated with a shower that came across the area, but it did produce a spin up, so very light rain, if any, and probably just one of those tornadoes that were not rain wrapped, and probably one of those tornadoes like we saw in Lee County. Moving on to that's the right one. 8:08 to 8:11 p.m. lasted for 3 minutes in Grundy and Tama counties, 1 miles southeast of Renbeck, and EF0 for 1.49 miles. Radar data on that, again, one of those light reflectivity spin-ups that occurred with that. And then one of the longer ones from 8:12 to 8:37, so that lasted roughly 25 minutes or so in Tim County, 2 miles northwest of Dinsdale, an EF1 for 9.81 miles. Again, one of the stronger ones that day in EF1 was associated with an isolated cell pretty much extending from northwest of Buckingham down through east of Traer, and the more heavier damage was pretty much centered northeast of the Traer area. So Traer has just been, you could be a chaser and just live there for a year and get your full supplement of tornadoes. Moving on from that, Dexter for 1 minute in Guthrie County was an EF1 with an 0.94 mile path length. Looking at the reflectivity on that, another light reflectivity, light rain, spin up tornado. And then from 8:45 to 9:03, so 18 to 19 minutes in Jasper County, 4.8 miles east of Baxter, was an EF0, 5.96 mile long path with that. And then again, 8:56 p.m., just 1 minute there in Benton County, 7 miles northwest of Keystone, was an EF0 for 0.10 miles. One of the shorter ones, 9:15 to 9:16, so 1 minute in Jasper County, 3.1 miles northwest of Kellogg, and EF0 for 0.52 miles. And then going into the month of August, we had 2 events, 3 tornadoes in all in August, the most recent on August 31st for the year. August 17th, we had 7 o'clock to 7:02 in Emmett County, was 2.55 miles southwest of Dolliver, an EF0 for 0.83 miles. Looking at the radar data associated with an isolated cell, but a very small path length, and another one of those spin-ups associated, pretty much known for Iowa's having those spin-up tornadoes. But sometimes those spin-up tornadoes can turn into something bigger, which is why people keep chasing here. And then finally, the final event of or more than likely final event, we don't know if something might pop up later this month, but more than likely final event was on August 31st, 2014, 7:57 to 8:01 for 4 minutes in Carroll County, 5.5 miles east-southeast of Litterdale, and an EF0 for 2 miles. Looking at the radar data from that, pretty much passed in the rural areas of Carroll County between Lanesboro and Glidden. Not a whole lot. Looks like along a line, another one of those spin-ups that occurred along the line, and then a stronger one that lasted for 4 minutes in Webster County from 8:36 to 8:40. Started 3 miles north of Dayton and lasted 3.35 miles. Looking at the radar data along with that, pretty much a line of storms heading through Dayton, Stratford, Lehigh area, again along the line. We're going to take a break here. We're going to take a short intermission just so I can go get something to drink. Our next segment will feature our winter weather preview for 2014. So stay put. We will be back in just a short bit. Alright, I am back after getting a short sip of water. Looking at our winter weather, we'll hopefully shoot for an end time of 8:30 to 8:45, within that range, depending on how far off topic we'll get. But briefly looking at our preliminary winter forecast, if we have one thing that I will mention is that I don't believe too much into the climate long-range preliminary winter outlooks. I've never really believed in them. I don't think at this point in the game that it's technologically possible. I mean, climate-wise, I guess you can. I mean, based off of averages and what's going on with the El Nino and such. But there's no way to make a mathematical, for sure prediction on what's going to happen up at that with weather in general. So,
a good thing would be for anybody to listen to when I had Dan Satterfield on a couple weeks ago. Doing winter weather forecasts is so difficult because of El Nino. Everybody said it was going to be strong, and now it's probably going to be a weak El Nino. So you need to, for anybody, listen to Dan Satterfield's episode that I had a couple of weeks ago where we discussed that. But from what I can see,
go ahead, Jeff.
When I was talking with Dan a couple of weeks ago, that it's looking a lot like, this is not a forecast, this was an opinion, that we could see something similar to last winter again. Doesn't mean we will, but we could see something similar, which would be a lot of cold weather, snow. Of course, it's going to be cold in the north. It's going to snow. It's going to happen.
Something that I have seen from the preliminary outlooks that I've seen from various sources, and I've done a little bit of research for my own, although I don't, again, like I said, I don't believe in that too much. Excuse me, but most of them are showing temperatures being generally below average from the southwestern part of Canada down through.
You might want to screen share that to show people.
Pretty much the southwestern part of Canada down through the Midwest and even portions of the Ohio and Tennessee Valley regions over through the mid-Mississippi Valley and even portions of the plains, and then just generally cooler than average temperatures elsewhere. As usual, above average temperatures expected in the west, again, at least with some of the preliminary outlooks that I've seen. This is just consensus. I don't have an actual map for it, but some of them are showing above average temperatures for the north. northwest, which again, like he said, it's not good, especially for the northern parts of
And
California.
especially California. If they're going to be under another ridge this winter, I'm sorry, but that's troubling.
For precipitation-wise, I've seen mainly most of them are showing uh, about average precipitation probabilities for the upper Mississippi Valley over to the northern plains and over through the northern parts of the Rockies, and above average precipitation. This is one thing to note here is that I have seen a lot of outlooks with above average precipitation for California through the desert Southwest,
That would be good.
through the southern plains, and through the southern portions of the Rockies, and even over to the lower Mississippi River.
And I'm wondering if they're basing that off of having a stronger El Nino, because when you have stronger El Ninos, it tends to be a lot stormier in California and in the Southwest. But if the El Nino doesn't get as strong as they think it's going to, you can pretty much wipe that out. And and especially if Southern California. Now there's been a lot of rain in the Southwest lately because we've had so many Pacific hurricanes just hitting it, just these remnants just slamming in. We even had one here, which was Norbert. The remnant of Norbert came through several weeks ago, and it dumped a lot of rain. I had 6 inches of rain here, and that was that was after we had gone several weeks with almost no rain. So, I mean, you can get a tropical system and whoosh, everything's back again. The grass had turned brown and was back to green again. So.
Like Jeff said, I do believe that, I do have some belief that this winter California will see a lot of relief from the drought. I mean, I won't say they'll see complete relief, but probably down through moderate to severe drought from their.
It's going to take a lot to get it down to moderate drought.
And I mean, I do think they'll see probably above average precipitation, but I do believe that I think a drought will begin to set in, if it hasn't already, to the northwest, up in Washington, Oregon, over through Idaho and northern California, as it already has. A lot of the outlooks are showing below average precipitation in that area and above average temperatures, which is troubling, like I said. And then also I'm seeing some that are showing below average precipitation for the Ohio Valley, and in terms of snowfall.
I don't think anybody there would mind.
Pretty much above average snowfall for the Carolinas over through the lower Mississippi Valley, and even over to the southern plains and over through portions of the desert Southwest. And then generally, just for Iowa, I would probably say the temperatures we'll see, unfortunately, similar to the last year. We don't like talking about that, because last year the temperatures were. I honestly got out of school for a lot of days more than usual because of the extreme cold. But precipitation-wise, I think we'll see average, and then it's not same with snowfall, at least for our general coverage area.
Well, we could have, with it being so cold now, and I mean, people are saying, for example, right now, earlier this week, we're doing this on October 3rd. On Monday here, it was in the 80s, which is very rare for the last couple of days of September. It is now the 3rd of October. We had a front come through. There was some severe weather in the south yesterday. A couple tornadoes. Down there in Alabama, I knew there was one small weak tornado that was in outside of Huntsville this morning. I think it was early this morning. And we had temperatures in the 80s, and now we're forecasting frost and freezes now, which people would say, oh my gosh, it's getting cold. You have to remember, in this area, in Iowa, the typical first frost or freeze is typically around the first week of October. So this is typical. This will happen. I mean, it is below average for temperatures because our average low is in the 40s. And the average high right now here is in the 60s. And so, I mean, we're going to start getting colder. It's going to snow. There's a chance we could see maybe a flurry or two tonight. So it happens. It doesn't mean any flurries that could happen now means, oh my gosh, it could be snowing and there could be snow all over the place on Halloween. It could be 65 degrees on Halloween, which is in 4 weeks from tonight.
And just to kind of going from our winter weather preview over to current weather, going for a radar now. This is up in Minnesota right now, up around the Duluth area. They're seeing some snowfall. If we can load our animation with that here in a minute. But that isn't one that would suck to have snow. I imagine if you're going to a high school football game right now, I mean, even look through Duluth, if we turn off our effective precipitation layer, you can see a stronger snow band going through Duluth there. So
and that's coming south. That's going to hit us probably very late tonight, probably by tomorrow morning.
And if we put up our temperature, not MCUs, but
I don't think we want to. It's too cold.
If we look at the temperatures, we're already beginning to see temperatures cool down into the upper 30s, and this is 8 o'clock. I mean, by 1 a.m. we could be like, I'll say this, I honestly would not be surprised to see a location hit 29 or 30 degrees, especially in our far, far north coverage area up in the Minnesota, the lower Minnesota counties there. I would not be surprised, because if you look there, there's some locations already hitting 37 over there in Worthington. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see upper 20s or even, and of course, lower 30s for the northern half of Iowa. So, if this precipitation does make it down, and if we change our METAR layer over to dew points, I mean, it is fairly dry in terms of how much moisture is in the atmosphere, but enough to support a little bit. And the wind, if it does snow, it will be blowing, so maybe we need to issue winter weather advisories.
Oh God, we may have to have a whole show about winter weather advisory.
But for the most part, while our radar is showing there's snow, we should mention that some of them are mainly showing a wintry mix. The only locations really showing it is in Big Fork and over through Chisholm, Hibbing Airport. Mainland, Duluth, probably urban heating is keeping them for the most part.
Well, you have to remember, I think it's not urban heat island in Duluth, it's the lake. Lake Superior is probably warmer than the air above it now. So Duluth will be warmer than the surrounding area for at least several weeks until the lake starts to freeze.
It's pretty interesting. It is 39 right now in Grand Marais, but it's 47 at the Bay of Grand Marais, which is pretty funny because it just, like Jeff said, it shows different. Actually, if I load up, I do actually have a layer. I'll see if I can go find
the water temperature. I think the water temperature at Lake Superior is in the 40s. It's going to take a while for that to start to freeze, so you'll start to see ice on Lake Superior probably. You'll start seeing it sometime in the middle to latter half of October. It all depends on what the pattern is. By looking at the models lately, I don't see much that's going to change this pattern. We're going to have a progressive pattern where you're going to get these cold snaps. They don't last long, but sooner or later these cold snaps are going to come and they're going to stay. And it's just going to stay cold. Not going to be 65 forever.
I do have the
Florida.
I'll see if I can get this information up here on screen share once it loads. But okay, screen share, entire screen. Okay, so right now what I'm showing are the air temperatures for marine. 43. This is on Lake Superior. So we're looking at mid-40s right now in Superior, but the water temperatures, 50 degrees, 53 degrees
Yeah.
Near the Duluth Metro. So relatively, that's probably keeping things overall above, even if it does drop below 30 in Duluth. Still, Lake Superior should keep
You're
things.
you're you're then going to get the fog,
Yeah.
warmer water. You
Which I will know. I visit Duluth about every year, and it is so. I haven't been up there in the fall for the last couple of years, but it is so cool. The Duluth in itself is just a beautiful place, but to see these weather phenomenons happen at the same time with it, um, it's really cool to see all that happening. But pretty much. So I will mention here. We do have. Let's stop sharing. There we go. We do have a freeze warning in effect for the western fourth of the state, pretty much extending for 3 counties over to the west, for most of the area, affecting I-80, I-29, those areas. So in the morning, it is in effect from 2 or 3 in the morning to 8 or 9 a.m. So depending on what area you're in. But so pretty much a bundle. All I would say is to just grab some blankets, go to bed, and just snuggle in. And honestly, open your windows and just grab a lot of blankets, because one of the best things that can help you get sleep is, one, you can rebuild your air supply to get fresh air with the windows. With the cold air, it will help your respiratory systems. And then it's just kind of a cool feeling to be on the covers when it's like really cold. I mean, that's just my opinion. So just on a personal side with that. But since it is 90 minutes now, we'll try to wrap this up. Our shout outs. With this, I'll see if I can go grab the one that I'm going to do is the Iowa Tornadoes of 2014 page from the National Weather Service. Number one, it is a wealth of information. They put a lot of work into this, and we thank them for that, as it is very cool website for that information. So that is my shout out, Jeff. If you have yours.
I'm gonna, since I wanted to do the thing about the national severe weather this year. I'm going to pretty much do a shout out on all of the live streams from April 28th, 2014, which was a fairly nasty tornado outbreak in the South. And there's several videos on it on YouTube, from Birmingham, from Tupelo, from Huntsville. I mean, then we had the tornado the day before that was in Valonia, Arkansas again. So there's that video. That's from Little Rock. So there's a lot of those videos, so you can check them out. I'd probably have to do like 50 links to do it, but there's a bunch of them.
We actually have a playlist for that, so we'll share that. But I'm trying to remember the routine here. Contact information, you can email us at info@iawx.net. You can tweet to the network at IowaWX Network. Jeff can be reached at IowaWX. I can be reached at Henry C. Luker _WX, not Henry Plucker. Jeff, am I missing anything, or are we
About our guests coming up that I'm probably going to do myself. We have next week is Rob Perillo from KATC in Lafayette, Louisiana. We'll probably be talking hurricanes and a certain incident that occurred many years ago. I'll just say it has to do something about the Space Shuttle Columbia disaster, because he witnessed it. And we have Mark Bogner, that guy. He's formerly from KSNW or KSN in Wichita. And then we have Doug Hetty from KOAM in Joplin, Missouri. You can take a guess what he's going to be talking about. We have several other guests. Also, we have Eric Fisher, formerly from the Weather Channel, is at WBZ in Boston. He is on November the 7th. We have 2 other guests lined up. I have not confirmed them yet, so I'm not going to mention them yet, but they are going to be on after Eric in November. You'll have to stay tuned and find out who they are. So that's what's coming up in the next, 5-6 weeks.
So thank you to everyone that tuned in tonight. If you didn't go out to the high school football games here in Iowa, have a great night, everybody. Snuggle under the covers and just stay warm as we battle through a preview of Iowa winters. Have a great night, everybody, and God bless.